graveyards. For many, they're just reminders of death, of things that have passed. And in Singapore, where every square foot of land is precious, many graveyards are already gone, with the government making way for a rapidly growing city. But for a few, these spaces hold much more. A link to culture, history, and a sense of belonging. Some preserve these traditions as a passionate pursuit, others as their life's work. We wanted to understand their views, motivations, and what they hope to keep alive in these quiet, forgotten places. Reflecting on death in the context of space and individual values, their perspective revealed a shift in values. So what does the younger generation think? How do they feel about grave exhumation in Singapore? What do they imagine will happen to their own bodies after they're gone, in a city where even graves aren't permanent? And how do other religions and cultures feel about it?
So have you thought about how your body would be handled when you pass away?
I never really thought about it before.
I think honestly, I don't really mind either.
I think because of religious stuff, I would like to be buried because that's like the proper way in my religion.
If you ask me now, I would probably be cremated because if I was buried, I feel like my body's still there. I would choose that option, and it's kind of common in my culture as well.
I think I would like to be cremated. If I'm buried, right, I'm taking up unnecessary space when I'm gone.
There's actually a lot of ways to handle the human body. So some people actually donate their body, others use tree burial, or some even use cryogenic stasis to freeze their bodies after they die. So what do you think of such burial methods?
Personally, I wouldn't mind if it was used for research because I think that's kind of useful for the future.
I've seen before a pretty cool one, which is you can turn your body into like fertilizer. Like they just plant a tree with your body like wrapped around. I think that's pretty cool.
No, because I don't know, I find that a bit odd for my body to be just absorbed by a tree. But I think if there were other ways like outside of my religion, I would probably want my ashes to be distributed in the water because I think it's very cute.
I don't think I would go for any of that because when I die, I just want to die lah. Like it just sounds too like out of the world for me lah.
I don't think we should preserve like someone's life because you can't really think, you can't really do anything else. And that tree absorbing nutrients one sounds ridiculous.
I think I would want my organs to be donated to other people because like at least I'm still of use even when my conscience is not here.
Do you agree with the government actually exhuming graves to make more space for Singapore? Or do you think it's actually erasing some of the cultures of the cemeteries?
I think it's a pretty sensitive subject. There is sentimental value of the family members, which I think should be taken into account. It's necessary. Singapore is a small country with not much land.
I feel like it's erasing culture because the bodies were there for years, like even before we were born. If it was your family member, you wouldn't, like, it just feels wrong.
I think they should use the space to build more land because there's more people coming to Singapore. But for the land where they use it for like people's burials, they should just keep it.
It still needs to be preserved because there are like older generations who still prefer like their bodies to be buried. So if the government decides to completely erase that, then I feel like it's not really fair.
I think it's okay because like honestly when you're dead, right, you don't need the space anymore. So I think it's better if you put it for another use. But I understand other people when they feel like they want to preserve their relatives or their friends' bodies. But my own opinion is that I don't think keeping dead bodies are worth it.
I feel like it's something that's unavoidable since Singapore is a very small country. They need to have space to build BTOs and stuff. But I think religiously and culturally as well, there are certain like do's and don'ts because the land there's allowed to be exhumed, right, are only graves that are on the temporary occupation land. So the government can exhume graves there, but there's also certain very strict conditions in terms of what the Islamic law, the Sharia say. So basically like if the land is a wakaf land, which means that land can't be touched. We believe like religiously, spiritually, because the body has not completely decayed, they are not allowed to move or touch the bones because it's not good for the soul. You know, it will disrupt what we believe happened after death. As a Malay Muslim myself, I feel like this type of things are unavoidable, but it's the conditions that we have to accept.
For many, these issues feel too distant from their daily lives to spark much opinion or interest. However, these topics touch others more deeply. To truly understand the impact of grave exhumation and the fading of culture tied to these spaces, we turn to those who feel it most closely, relatives of those who laid to rest. Their stories offer a window into the emotional weight and personal significance of these changes, revealing how history, memory, and loss intertwine in ways that are both intimate and profound.
Much to our disappointment, the Choa Chu Kang Chinese Cemetery was already torn down when we arrived. However, we fortunately could still visit the Christian cemetery nearby, where we spoke with visitors about their thoughts on cemetery teardowns.
So what do you think of the government exhuming cemetery? So if they want to exhume your grandmother's or mother's remains, what do you think?
Not many people agree to cremate it. So you must give them a chance. Let them bury. But you say no land, go to the island. So many islands we can use.
These are all my great aunts, grandparents, exhumed the whole of Bidadari and asked to move here. They've been resting in peace for a long time. So initially it didn't seem right, but I also can understand the scarcity of land in Singapore. I suppose the only option is to do what the government is doing, having to move the dead once they're buried. But I can understand where the government is coming from.
I think it's a good move, right? Because Singapore is so small, but then it depends on individual. You know, will it pass on to the younger generation? I don't know. The most my grandson generation will come and visit you, and after that, I don't think the future generation will come. So what are the difference?
I think it's better also. My father-in-law is the other side. Into yeah, this coconut tree.
You plant how many years ago?
10 or 20 years ago. Wow. Nobody come. Very hard. So far away. Yeah, you also really. So many years I didn't come. After I used the bleach, also clean and white. I assume then you'll put a St. Anne church. Because my dad one was at St. Anne church.
They exhume, then they cremate, then they put in the church, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. That one my younger brother. The other side.
Okay.
Cancer. Yeah, also died of cancer.
He's
a racer.
Racer.
Motorbike racer. My wife one is the other side. The time the garden was so clean and nice, you see. How many years I didn't come only like that.
Right. You come every few years,
Not every few years, every few months.
every few months.
Last time every day I got. My mother like coconut water. That's what I plant for.
Usually there's all those like services to help you clean, right?
But give money away,
Yeah,
they never come and clean.
Is it?
Yeah. I even brought them here and then they didn't come and clean with what they want to do. My wife's side, I just gave that one who clean, just give him $50 to clean. And nobody come and visit. It's one more day for you. Money finished and disappears.
To delve deeper into the history and culture of our cemeteries, we contacted a volunteer of All Things Bukit Brown, a heritage group that conducts guided walks, advocates for the preservation of Bukit Brown Cemetery, and collects research about the site.
Just introduce yourself and what is your connection with the Bukit Brown Cemetery tour guide?
My name is Darren Koh. I'm one of the volunteers with All Things Bukit Brown, which is a loose collection of volunteers who are trying to save Bukit Brown Cemetery. We're most famous for our free guided walks. There are others of us who sit on various committees. There are those who help families reconnect with their ancestors who are buried in Bukit Brown. I, on the other hand, focus on giving tours. And I actually got hooked on the history of the place. But what got to me was when I realized that a lot of Singaporeans didn't know their own history. And Bukit Brown is a wonderful place where you can walk amidst beautiful nature, look at tombstones. They're like icons on your desktop. You click them and it takes you to a different time, a different place, a different world. It's about men who came over with a dream of making money and going home and then they didn't get to go home, they built a life here. They actually built the things that make Singapore today. I realized someone has to tell the stories.
So, how do you think these guided tours actually contribute to preserving the cemetery? Do you think people are more aware of the significance of the cemetery?
The answer is yes. I think in the early days of Singapore's development, I mean, if you're talking about 1950s and the 60s and 70s, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we were definitely looking at survival, warmth, location to stay. But Singapore of today is different. The stories that we tell at Bukit Brown are part of the who am I story. Why did my family come here and not stay in Malacca? Who literally built some of the buildings that we see today? What we hope to do is to tap in on the fact that as a country, we are looking for meaning. Bukit Brown provides a narrative, a story. This is how we got to where we are. And hopefully, together, your questions, our stories, help tell people this is heritage. This is something we want to keep. Something which in the older days, we just needed the land to build on. Now, I think we are at the stage where let's not throw everything out. Let's keep something to remind us of where we came from.
Singapore has started to exhume a lot of graves in the recent years. What do you think of the Singapore government actually exhuming all these graves up? Do you think it's sort of erasing culture in a sense?
I always end by telling participants, some of you here today are going to be part of that decision making as to whether you keep the cemetery. I may not agree with that decision. I won't say you're wrong. Why? Let's get real. There are limited resources. I respect the decisions. My greatest fear is that the decision will be taken by people who have never been there. If you just look at a cemetery as a place to put the dead, then you can put it anywhere. You could just toss them into the sea. But if you see it more as an open-air repository of culture, then that's a different idea now. And one of the things that I do on the walk, we explain the difference between a Teochew tombstone and a Hokkien tombstone. And there lies differences of culture that show what was important to each type of families. And these are information that is lost to us because in today's world, few people maintain the traditions. And unfortunately, when you go to a columbarium, you don't have that space to put a lot of information we used to be able to put. So the danger is that if you take everything out, you actually break the links with history. We need the land to develop, totally agree. But when you make that choice, let it be a considered choice, not one that just says, oh well, government wants to dig up.
The reluctance of the young to engage with post-death leaves the future of cemeteries uncertain, caught between the demands for land in a growing city and the preservation of cultural heritage. Ultimately, it is up to the people to decide. Will these sacred spaces be sacrificed for progress, or will their historical and cultural significance prevail in shaping our shared identity?